I never thought I would ever hear children look me straight in the eye and tell me that they don't follow step-parent rules, but that's exactly what happened. And it wasn't said quietly, or respectfully, or even in frustration. No, they said it laughing, confidently, like they were proud of it, as if being disrespectful to someone who had spent years trying to love them was some sort of accomplishment. Tell me honestly, if your stepchildren looked at you and basically said you're not a real parent so you don't deserve respect, what would you have done? Would you have stayed quiet? Would you have fought back? Or would you have done what I eventually did, step back and stop offering anything at all? Because that's what I did, and the consequences that followed shook the entire house. Let me start from the beginning so you understand how things got to that point. I met their father, Mark, 6 years ago. I was 34 at the time, divorced, stable in my career, and ready to rebuild my life with someone mature and emotionally open. Mark had 2 kids from his previous marriage, Ella, who was 13 then, and Ryan, who was 10. Their mother, Claire, was still in their lives, but Mark had primary custody during the weekdays because he worked from home while Claire worked out of town most weekdays. When I first met the kids, I was excited. I actually wanted to be a parental figure, not a replacement mom, but someone warm, safe, helpful, and consistent in their lives. I didn't want to come barreling in like some Disney stepmother stereotype. I wanted to earn their respect slowly and naturally. At the beginning, things seemed fine. The kids weren't overly friendly with me, but they also weren't rude. They were distant but understandable distant, the kind children hold onto when they're still adjusting to the idea of someone new. I was patient. I offered help with homework. I tried cooking dinners they liked. I organized small game nights. I never forced affection. I kept reminding myself, they just need time. But the thing about time is that it doesn't fix anything if someone else is undoing your progress behind the scenes. And in this case, that someone was their mother. Now I never wanted a war with their mom. She was their biological parent, and I respected that. When she came to pick them up or drop them off, I said hello, I complimented her hair, I asked how she was. But she never liked me. I could feel it in the air, not just dislike but resentment, as if by existing, I was some sort of threat. She wasn't outright hostile, but she had this way of looking at me like I wasn't supposed to speak. Like my presence itself was offensive. I tried to be civil, thinking we would eventually at least find a neutral place. That never happened. And eventually, I started hearing small things from the kids, comments that clearly didn't come from them. For example, the first time I asked them to set the table before dinner, Ella told me, "Mom says only real parents can make us do chores." I tried not to take it personally. I told her lightly, "Everyone in a house helps, that's just how it works." She shrugged and did it, but the seed was planted. Over the next months, small comments started growing. The kids would argue only with me about bedtime, about homework, about manners, about basic things. If Mark told them something, they did it. If I told them the exact same thing, suddenly there was debate, pushback, or outright dismissal. At first, Mark stepped in every time. He backed me up. He told them they had to respect me. He told them I was an adult in the house, and they didn't get to treat me differently. I appreciated him for that. I really did. But with divorced households, consistency is a myth when the other parent chooses sabotage, whether intentional or not. And Claire, somehow, always managed to plant the idea that I was not their real parent and therefore not entitled to demand anything. The first major turning point came about 2 years into the relationship. I was helping Ryan with his math homework while Mark was on a work call. Ryan got frustrated, tossed his pencil aside, and told me, "I only have to listen to Dad and Mom. You're not the parent." I told him calmly that I was just trying to help him. He shook his head and said, "Mom says step-parents are like teachers, they can help but they don't make rules." That stung more than I let show. He was still a kid, and kids copy what they hear. I didn't blame him. But inside I felt the ground shift for the first time. Something inside me whispered, this is going to get worse. And it did. Because over time, Claire's influence became bolder. They became comfortable rejecting anything I asked because they believed there were no consequences. And every time Mark tried to enforce something, they would cry and pout and say, "But Mom said you're letting her boss us around." And suddenly, Mark was conflicted. He didn't want to undermine me, but he also didn't want the kids to think he was choosing me over them. I understood. But emotionally, it was exhausting. It felt like trying to swim upstream, while someone else dumped buckets of water on me from above. One of the worst days came about a year after we got married and moved into a new house together. I was planning a special dinner to celebrate Mark receiving a promotion. I spent the day cleaning, baking, prepping food, lighting candles, setting up a really nice evening. The kids came home from school and immediately threw their backpacks on the floor, shoes in the hallway, coats on the table. I didn't scold them. I just said, "Hey guys, could you put your things in your rooms? We're trying to keep the place nice for the celebration tonight." Ella didn't even look up from her phone and said, "Not my rule." I smiled, still trying to keep things light, and said, "It's not a rule, just being considerate." She laughed and said, "Mom said we don't follow step-parent rules. You don't get to tell us what to do." There it was. The line spoken clearly. With confidence. Without hesitation. Without shame. And then Ryan repeated it like some kind of chorus line, "Yeah, step-parents don't get to make rules." They walked away. I stood there frozen, holding a dish towel in my hands, staring at the spot where two kids had just told me I meant nothing in my own home. And the worst part? They genuinely believed it. Because someone taught them that. That night, I told Mark everything, and he was furious, at them, at Claire, at the whole situation. He grounded them for the weekend, took away electronics, and made it crystal clear that I was his wife and an authority figure in the house. I appreciated that. He really did try. But punishment is meaningless if their mother spends the next week undoing it. And surprise, the very next time I tried to enforce a simple rule like "please rinse your dishes before putting them in the sink," the argument began again, this time with both kids yelling that I should stop acting like Mom 2.0. I'll be honest, my heart broke slowly, not suddenly. Every day chipped another piece off. I went from hopeful to frustrated to tired to emotionally numb. I was giving love, effort, time, energy, patience, and getting hostility in return. And yet, I kept trying because I believed loving a child meant being consistent even when they rejected you. But the thing I hadn't learned yet was that consistency means nothing if they've been taught to believe your presence is temporary, optional, and undeserving of respect. Fast forward to last year when things escalated into the event that finally pushed me past the point of no return. It was a Saturday morning, and Mark had gone out to run errands while I stayed home with the kids. The night before, I had told them that we would be deep cleaning the upstairs bedrooms this morning because they were honestly disgusting, clothes everywhere, food wrappers under beds, old cups with juice stains, and even a moldy sandwich I accidentally discovered while picking up laundry a week prior. They complained, but I told them firmly that it needed to be done. Morning came, I knocked on their doors at 10 a.m. and said, "Up and moving. Let's get this done." They ignored me. I knocked again and said, "Guys, I'm serious. Your dad expects this too." Finally Ella came to the door and said, "We don't follow step-parent rules." Mom said it. "We're not doing anything you say." And Ryan popped his head from behind her and said, "Yeah, Mom said there's nothing you can do anyway." I looked at these kids, now 15 and 12, and something in me snapped. And not in a screaming, yelling way. No. I felt everything inside me go still and quiet. I said calmly, "Okay. Understood." I walked away. And from that moment, I stopped offering anything. I stopped cooking for them. I stopped cleaning their messes. I stopped helping with homework. I stopped buying birthday gifts. I stopped doing laundry. I stopped driving them places. If they asked me a question, I answered politely but minimally. If they asked for something extra, I redirected them to their father. I wasn't rude. I wasn't cold. I was neutral. I became exactly what their mother wanted, a background character, not a parental figure. And here's the interesting thing, when you stop providing things people have taken for granted, they notice. They always notice. At first, they were thrilled. They thought they won. They bragged on the phone to their mother. I heard Ella saying things like, "She doesn't even try anymore, she knows her place now." But as days turned into weeks, something else happened. They slowly began to realize how much I'd actually been doing. The laundry pile grew. Dinners became simpler because Mark had to cook after work. They had to pack their own school lunches. They had to buy their own missing notebooks. Nobody checked homework for errors. Nobody cleaned their rooms when they left trash everywhere. And Mark, to his credit, refused to step in and take my place. He told them, "You told her she wasn't allowed to set rules. You can't reject her authority but still expect her efforts." Around the middle of all this, I remember sitting alone at the kitchen table thinking about the whole situation, and I want to pause here and ask you, the viewer, the same question I asked myself at the time. If you were in a home where you tried your best to be a loving parental figure, but were openly told you had no authority and no respect, would you have kept giving your time, energy, and love? Or would you have stepped back like I did? Before I tell you what happened next, seriously think about it. Drop your answer in the comments. What would you have done in my shoes? Because what happened next was the part nobody expected. After about 6 weeks, their entire attitude shifted. Their rooms had become literal health hazards. Their grades dropped. Ella got detention twice for missing homework. Ryan failed 2 quizzes. Their mom, instead of helping, yelled at Mark on the phone that he needed to control his wife. And I stood in the kitchen during that phone call, listening to Mark say, "She's not the problem. The kids are disrespectful and you encouraged that." Claire screamed, "She is not their parent, she cannot enforce rules." And Mark replied, "Then she cannot provide parental effort either." Later that night, he called a family meeting. The kids sat at the dining table, arms crossed, eyes angry. I sat quietly, hands folded, calm and detached. Mark said in a firm voice, "You told her she wasn't allowed to act as a parent, so she stopped. Now you see how much she actually did. You can't have it both ways." Ella started crying, saying that I was punishing them. Mark said, "She isn't punishing you. She's respecting your boundary. You set the rule, not her." Ryan said, "But we need help." Mark replied, "Then maybe you should have respected the person who was helping." Then he looked at me and said, "Do you want to say anything?" I said, calmly, "I have no anger toward you. I care about you both. But love without respect becomes abuse. I cannot continue giving and giving while being told I am not allowed to be an authority figure." So I stepped back. The door is open if you want to rebuild the relationship. But I am done forcing myself into a role you don't want me to fill. There was a long silence. And in that silence, something finally sank in. Over the following weeks, the kids slowly started changing. Small things at first. Putting dishes in the sink. Asking politely if I could help with homework. Saying thank you. Not always, sometimes old habits came back. But effort appeared. Respect began forming, not instantly but gradually. It took 3 months before Ella came to me one evening and said something I will never forget. She looked uncomfortable, nervous, but she said, "I know we didn't treat you right. Mom told us that loving you meant we were betraying her. I'm sorry." I hugged her. And I said, "You never had to choose." Ryan apologized 2 days later. Things aren't perfect now. Rebuilding trust takes time. But the difference is that now they understand that love and respect go hand in hand. They also understand what I actually contribute, not just emotionally, but physically, mentally, and logistically. Looking back, I realized that stepping back was the best decision I could have made, not just for my sanity, but for their growth. If I had kept giving while they kept taking, nothing would have changed. Sometimes people only understand value through absence. And children are no exception. So here's my final thought: blended families are hard. No one teaches you how to be a step-parent. No one prepares you for navigating the opinions, resentments, or insecurities of other adults involved. And sometimes the kids become collateral damage in the emotional war they never asked to be a part of. But at the end of the day, respect has to go both ways. If you are good to someone, you deserve goodness back, not immediately, not perfectly, but eventually. If you listened to my story and you were on my side, like this video. If you think I should have handled it differently, tell me in the comments what you would have done. And if you want more stories like this, real, emotional, complicated family stories, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you all in the next story.